I wrote The Emotionally Healthy Leader out of a wall I hit in 2007. I'd been the lead pastor at that point of New Life Fellowship for 19 years. For years, we were experiencing the powerful benefits of emotionally healthy spirituality, or EHS for short, in our church. We were growing, we had a large staff, a large community development ministry to the poor, but I struggled with the integration, that is like the embedding of EHS into the running of the organization. Things like planning, decision-making, hiring, firing, budgeting, team building, endings, new beginnings, the setting of healthy boundaries in the organization. So over the next 8 years, I stepped into a more executive role in the very intentional building of a healthy organizational culture and staff at New Life. It turned out to be far more complex, far more difficult than I had imagined. So I carefully recorded notes in my journal of the new learnings that I was having. And so the book, after these years, The Emotionally Healthy Leader, emerged. It's the fruit of what I learned over those 8 years. The thesis of the book can be summed up very simply. What you do matters. Who you are matters even more. Let me say it again. What you do matters, but who you are matters even more. Building a ministry, a church, a nonprofit is a lot like building a skyscraper. First you dig down for the foundation, and then you build up. The foundation in this case is your inner life, and the quality of the building is to be determined by how carefully this foundation is laid. So let me illustrate this. The island of Manhattan consists almost entirely of granite, that is, a very hard and strong type of rock. So to carry the weight of a 75 or 100-story skyscraper, builders have to lay a proper foundation with anchors that they call piles. These piles are concrete or steel beams. They hammer them deep into the ground until they penetrate that solid rock. So for especially tall buildings, some piles or steel beams are driven 25 stories below the ground. Now the heavy weight of a skyscraper is then distributed through each of those piles or steel beams. And so together they support the structure's enormous weight. Now if the foundation piles or steel beams are drilled or driven in poorly, cracks will eventually appear in the structure when they build up. Entire buildings may lean, windows won't open, and at times they've had to lift the entire building up so the piles can be reset. Other times they've had to tear down the building and start all over again. There are many issues we might identify as important to developing and transforming the inner life of a leader. God led me to 4 as foundational, that unless these are laid properly, we can't build healthy churches and communities. And I discovered that unless these 4 steel beams were deeply drilled into the hard rock of a leader's interior life, it would be impossible to build a strong ministry high and wide, especially over the long term. So in other words, we need a deep foundation, what I call an inner life, that can effectively support our leadership, that is, our outer life. Otherwise, we grow our ministries and organizations larger and faster than the depth of our foundation can sustain. And it's only a matter of time before they lean or crack. So the 4 inner life issues are: 1, face your shadow; 2, lead out of your marriage or singleness; 3, slow down for loving union with Jesus; and 4, practice Sabbath delight. That is the first main part of the book, The Emotionally Healthy Leader. Now these 4 foundations then impact and inform the way we do our critical outer leadership tasks that we're engaged in every day. And I identified 4 of these, and this forms the second part of the book: planning and decision-making, culture and team building, power and wise boundaries, endings and new beginnings. It seems logical that a deep inner life should lead to good organizational practices. Sadly, however, it often does not. There's a disconnect when we fail to apply our spirituality with Jesus to these outer leadership tasks like planning and team building and boundaries and endings. Too often, we rely instead on secular or business practices to navigate these tasks, and we graft secular branches onto our spiritual root system. And this tends to bear the wrong kind of fruit, again, long term. While it's important that we redeem and we learn from the best of what we can from the marketplace. But these must be carefully pruned so that they fit into the spiritual life of our teams and ministries. The life from our root system with Jesus must flow upward and then outward into every aspect of our outer leadership tasks if we're going to bear good fruit. Integrating my inner life with these 4 outer life tasks was nothing short of exhilarating and life-giving, both for me personally and for our church. Not only was it a joy, it was liberating on a scale that we could never have imagined. So the Emotionally Healthy Leader is not a quick read. It's meant to be read slowly, prayerfully, and carefully. So I invite you to keep your journal or pad of paper with you, make notes and write down questions as God speaks to you. If you want to maximize the impact of what you read, I encourage you to use the free discussion guide that you can download from our website. Take 55 minutes of your team meeting for 9 weeks and read and wrestle through the powerful concepts with your team. And my hope is that this book offers you a door into a whole new way of viewing yourself as a leader and a radically new way of leading. Just as our father Abraham was called, I believe each of us is called to leave our familiar country and follow God's invitation to the unknowns of new territory, one that's full of promise. My prayer is that you will meet the living God in new and fresh ways as you journey through these pages. And you'll discover, like Abraham, that the Lord has gone ahead of you, preparing riches and revelation that will not only transform you, but also those you lead.